got a phenomenal interview today, family. I'm interviewing Mark Fuller, CEO of Manager of Wealth. www.managerofwealth.com. So come on into the building. The show will start in 1 minute. We're going to have a positive build. We're talking about how to make some money and not lose it.
Real truth and power.
Hit that like and that share. Another powerful interview.
Wealth. Knowledge of self. Uplifting the community. Let's talk about it. Real truth and power. Health. Wealth. Knowledge of self.
Shout out, what's up, Miss Diane
Uplifting
Thomas.
the community. Let's talk about it.
All right, welcome to the Real Truth and Power Live podcast. We provide health, wealth, and knowledge itself. I'm excited to be here today. We got another phenomenal interview with Mark Fuller. For those that don't know, we're doing very well with the podcast. We're on Africa TV now, Twitch TV, Daily Motion. If you haven't heard of the Collective Black People Movement, you got to go to their YouTube channel. We're about to just push a whole lot of other shows, including my own. It's going to be like a black network. So that's collectiveblackpeoplemovement.com. And of course, go to our YouTube channel, also Real Truth and Power. Hit the subscribe on both and the alert bells. You always get alerts, and they're going to be starting to give away prizes as well. We got a phenomenal interview with Mark Fuller, CEO and Manager of Wealth. If you missed our first interview, you missed a lot of information. Brother Mark is always coming with some powerful, powerful content. So before I bring my brother in, let's get it going.
You are now tuned in to Real Truth and Power, the show that uplifts the community with health, wealth, and knowledge of self. Here's your host, Everett Winchester.
All right, blessed to be here again. Like I said, we got a phenomenal guest. If you're just tuning in, we have Mark Fuller, CEO and Manager of Wealth. I always like to have Mark come on because he's helping me make money and not lose money. He's a powerful, powerful brother. So if you're tuning in to Africa TV, Twitch TV, the Collective Black People Movement, I know we're streaming all over the place right now. Please hit that like button, hit that share button. Let's get this information out to the people. This brother is very powerful. He has a lot of great content. So please stay tuned. And let me bring Mark into the fold right now. All right, we're blessed to have my brother Mark Fuller back with us again. For those that don't know, Mark, tell the people a little bit about your background and let's get it in.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate you. My name is Mark Fuller. I am the managing partner of a company called Manager of Wealth, which also has a subset, a company called Manager of Credit. And my background is in finance. I've been in finance since 1992, started out in the insurance industry, went from the insurance industry into personal finance and investments, spent 6 years in the fashion business during the whole urban clothing revolution, and then came back into finance in the mortgage business in the early 2000s, and have run a mortgage brokerage doing both residential and commercial lending, and also just investor, real estate investor, business investor, and what have you. And Manager of Wealth is a company that I built because I found that a lot of financial professionals were not giving consistent advice. The accountants, the lawyers, your brokers, the advice that they were giving just didn't go together. And so because I'd studied all of those disciplines and worked in all of those areas, I wanted to have a conduit where a person would have an advisor that could give them strategic advice around all things finance, money, and investment. And so we started Manager of Wealth in 2012.
Now, I wanted to get into it. I think you mentioned it a little bit on the last time you were with us about giving or taking an assessment on your financial and your health and things of that nature. Could you go into that a little bit about, how someone can assess themselves and, why it's very important?
Absolutely. So as we are in this very unique time under the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic that we are experiencing right now, everybody right now has an opportunity to kind of slow down, sit still for a second, and really take full inventory. It's crucial right now that we kind of look at some of the do's and don'ts of what this moment to literally
Hold up, go back a little bit. You froze, Mark. Go back a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You good.
Being under this coronavirus and pandemic, right now is the best time to really do a sound and solid assessment of where we are in all areas and categories of our life. So from a financial standpoint, we really need to kind of put pen to paper and look at where are we in terms of liquidity, where are we in terms of our cash, where are we in terms of our access to credit, where are we in terms of our debt, where are we in terms of our goals, in terms of where we're in terms of where we're going. And we need to do, we need to look at it. We need to look at, are we on track for what we're really trying to get to in life, and have an honest assessment about that. Don't be embarrassed about it. If your answer to that question is no, this is the time to really start to make a plan where that's concerned. The other thing is that there's a lot of stress, of course, around this pandemic and people worrying about catching this coronavirus and what have you. The number one thing that you can do right now is really put the time and energy into getting healthier. And that means walking, running, riding your bike, lifting a little weight, doing some push-ups, doing some sit-ups, eating the proper things, more fruits and vegetables, less meat,
Right.
Drinking the proper amount of water, at least half your body weight in ounces every single day, because that's what's going to keep everything functioning. There's nobody listening to this podcast right now is not going to come in contact with this virus. We're all going to come in contact with it. Some of us will be infected with it. Some of us will, the defense of our immune system will squash it and we'll keep it moving and what have you. And so, but your chances of survival are exponentially greater the healthier you are, and that's been consistent. It's interesting that we've seen very, very few really healthy people being overtaken by this. I'm not saying you can't catch it. I'm saying you won't be necessarily destroyed by it, and that's particularly important. So if you aren't where you want to be, health-wise, weight-wise, stamina-wise, what have you, now is a great time to make that adjustment.
Yeah, that's a real good point. Sometimes people in these times, it's so hard that they're so focused on the financial, which actually drains them mentally, and then you start losing your physical, and
absolutely.
With this downtime, it's a great time to work out and just start getting your attitude and positivity up.
And the brain functions faster when you're in shape, when you're getting more oxygen in your blood and all of that as well. So absolutely, everything works together.
That's true. Now, I know there's a lot of aid out there for a lot of people. People probably getting aid, but may have a little income still coming in.
Mhm.
Talk about how they should be using their money if they have income, because a lot of people are doing a lot of things like deferring payments, stuff like that. Talk about what is your opinion on those type of things?
So a couple of things. Number one, we're seeing record unemployment, but we're also seeing that a lot of people who are professionals who are employed are not losing their jobs, right? So if you're employed right now, or let's start with the unemployed. If you're unemployed right now, any assistance that's out there, I encourage you to absolutely, positively take it, even if you don't need it at this moment. Take the aid and store it up. Take the capital and store it up. If you have reserves, great. Add to your reserves, because we just don't know how long this situation is going to go on. We don't know what the second and third wave of this is going to be. However, if you happen to still be employed, still earning the income that you were earning before the pandemic ever kicked in, I don't want you to mentally or financially throw yourself into the position of the person who has lost their income.
Right.
And I see a lot of that happening. I see folks, they were making six figures before this thing started. They still are. And they're making moves as if their income has been cut off. And what they're basically doing is they're putting themselves in a position where they are going to damage their credit, damage their relationships and if they damage their relationships with their creditors, then they are functionally, ultimately, long-term, cutting themselves off from access to capital.
Right.
So the short-term decision that you make to defer car payment or a mortgage or what have you can ultimately, down the line, cut you off from your credit cards, from the business loan you want to take 6 months from now, and from all of those things. So do an assessment. Keep your cash, keep your credit up to par. Pay your bills if you have the money. Again, I'm casting no aspersions on anybody that doesn't have the capital, doesn't have the liquidity. You have to make decisions based on your situation. But I see people damaging themselves in a way that is going to have repercussions long after this pandemic is over.
Right.
So store up your capital and take this opportunity. Listen, I know I can speak for myself personally that with this pandemic, I've been cooking at home every day, right? Brother, I promise you, if I ate at home 5 times in a month in the last 10 years, that was crazy. You know what I mean? I'm just a restaurant person and this, that, and the third, and I have the requisite bills that kind of go with living that lifestyle or whatever. But this pandemic has saved all kinds of money. You know,
That's true.
Going in the grocery store and dropping a couple $100s, which is something that typically I might spend in a day or two out of a month in eating out, you know, because I'm eating out breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, every day. So this is a time where it's just been a time to kind of stack, you know.
Good.
I'm not at the theater. I'm not at a lot of social events. I'm not at a lot of concerts. I'm not traveling as much. I'm not burning any gas. This is a great time to really just stack some capital.
That's true. That's true. Now, for those that are struggling, and maybe if they're not, but if they're struggling, maybe not have lost a lot of income, but, you know, have lost certain points of income because of the shutdown and the virus.
Right.
I know they have homes,
Right.
equity in their homes. Should they mess with that at all? What do you recommend for that? Leave it alone?
Well, so a couple things. If you're struggling with or do not have the income to make your mortgage payment, then avail yourself of the services around being able to defer your mortgage payments. But if you have the capital, keep making your mortgage payment, because they've been very unclear, and things developed a little bit this week with a little more clarification. See, when they gave a month and a half ago, when they said you could defer your mortgage payment, they didn't tell you that triggered what's called a forbearance, that you would then be in forbearance, because in the rules around forbearance said you couldn't basically get another loan or even refinance the loan that you had for 3 years after being in a forbearance or going through a foreclosure, either one of
Oh,
those two
wow.
things, right? So most people who had never been in a forbearance or never had a foreclosure didn't know what they were signing up for. And the rules had not been articulated as to how that money was to be paid back, when it was going to be demanded, because there is a huge difference between how the conventional loans and what they're allowing and what the government loans, your FHA and your VA loans, what they're allowing. See, the government can control the FHA and VA loans, what they allow. So if they allow you to roll that on to the end of your mortgage and all those things, they can make that determination, though they really haven't spelled it out as of yet, what your true options are long term. So imagine I lent you $100,000 and then I told you, I'll tell you what the terms are later.
Right.
I'm gonna lend you the money now, but I'll tell you in 2 months what you signed up for. That's
Right.
what a lot of people, I mean, last month, we had 15 million Americans, not pay their mortgages. Okay. So now conventional loans, on the other hand, are very different than the government loans, because conventional loans are owned by private lenders and investors, which means that you can't really mandate to them what they're going to allow, what they're not going to allow, how they're going to demand to be paid back. So originally, with the deferment with conventional loans, they were basically telling everybody, hey, you could defer for up to 90 days. But at the end of that 90 days, we want all 3 of those mortgage payments that you deferred.
Right.
Now, my question is, if I didn't have it 90 days ago, and I didn't have it 60 days ago, and I didn't have it 30 days ago, what makes you think I'm going to have 3 mortgage payments at the end of that time?
Right.
And still need to make that mortgage payment for that month. So you really needed 4 mortgage payments at the end of that. They're starting to come out with a little bit of guidance. Some of the conventional lenders put out some guidance this week that said basically that from the point that you get caught up, you would be out of the market, unable to refinance for about 90 days. And then after that point, your availability of being able to do what you need to do in terms of the mortgage market, buying and refinancing, would still be allowed, okay? Which is a very huge shift, because that has never been the rule. I've been lending money since 2001, and that's never been the rule. So they're making that shift, but again, it's not all in black and white. So everybody is not bound by that guideline. So it is still an ever developing thing. My choice, and what I've told a lot of my clients, just stay out of the mix. Stay out of the mix in terms of, if you don't have to be in the mix of playing this game with this bank and taking money that you don't know how it's going to be paid back, then avoid it.
Right.
Then absolutely positively avoid it. They're just figuring out the guidance on those paycheck protection loans, the PPP. A lot of people, if you looked at the language in the documents, it didn't tell you how to get the loan forgiven.
Right.
So they said, hey, here, borrow this money from me. I'm going to forgive 90% of it at some point, but I'm not telling you when. The documents that you sign don't say nothing about forgiveness. The documents you sign say, you owe me money, this is how much, and this is when you start paying.
Yeah.
Right? The forgiveness language is just being developed and what have you, and under the criterion. And a lot of people got the money and started using it, and now they're saying, oh, well, the guideline was you needed to use 90% of that money toward paying your payroll, which the people who got the money in the first 5 weeks weren't under that impression.
Right.
So if they use the money for anything else and can't demonstrate that they used it under the guideline that was established after you made the loan, now you owe the money. You're stuck.
Wow. I'm sure a lot of business owners didn't know that.
No, they didn't. And so that's why you see a lot of people, as the guidelines come out, you see people like, hey, I didn't touch that money. I'm just going to go ahead and return it. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So, it's a lot of games. It's a lot of games being played.
That's real interesting that you mentioned that, because I know a lot of people are probably, doing that with their mortgage, pushing the mortgage payments off and stuff like that. And then once this is over, they may want to refinance and find out they can't do it. That's very, very interesting. I didn't know that myself.
Plus, you got to remember, I mean, we have historically low interest rates. I've seen interest rates as low as 2.75%.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, you're cutting yourself off from cheaper capital. What corporations are doing right now are, because interest rates are historically low, they're going and restructuring all of their debt.
Mm.
And you got to understand, when you have a corporation and you have millions of dollars of debt, a point shift in the interest rate saves you millions of dollars, right? So they're looking at that. So we got to strategically look at that as well. The other thing that I will tell you is the biggest opportunity that's in the market right now, where mortgages and equity is concerned, is to actually get the equity out of your property and separate it from your property in your bank account, right? Because the thing about finance that you got to remember is banks don't lend you money when you need it. They lend you money when you don't need it.
Right.
When your credit is perfect, when you have reserves, when you've got high income and you look like you can pay them back, that's when you're a great bank customer. When you're struggling, for instance, right now, when you go to get a mortgage, on the day that you are going to close on that mortgage, the bank is calling your job to make sure you are, number one, still employed, right? And then number two, to ask them, they actually are asking this question now: what's the chance? Like, are you sure Everett's still going to have a job like a month from now? Any chance he could be laid off? Like, they're asking that question. If the person in your HR department where you work gives the wrong answer, your loan's not closing.
Wow.
So you could be employed that day, your credit be perfect, and this, that, and the third. So so think about this. Think about the person that has the $500,000 house, only owes $200,000, that has $300,000 in equity, but doesn't have $300,000 or even $100,000 in cash anywhere. What's their real safety net? Their real safety net is the money inside of that property. That's really 90% of most, especially for African Americans, that is 80% or more of all African Americans' positive net worth is equity.
Right.
Okay, it's not cash, it's not 401ks and all that stuff. It's equity. If I could cut you off from your equity, right, I've effectively bankrupted you, because the only thing you can do at that point to get money is to sell that home to get to where your capital is stashed, correct? Right. I mean, it's like, okay, well, I won't let you borrow it. So now, say you lost your job, but you got $300,000 there. Man, if you could have pulled that capital out and set it in an account, you'd have the money to get yourself through the next 12 months. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So a lot of people have to think defensively and strategically and get as liquid as possible. You need to, I mean, I'm telling people there's 2 and 3% money out there, right? That a lot of people have the credit and the income to be able to access. They own that money. They need to get possession of that money. And if you borrow the money out of your house, and say your mortgage is with Bank of America, and you have Bank of America bank accounts, do not put that money, when you take it out of your house, do not put it in a Bank of America bank account. Put it in another bank so that that bank does not have access to taking that equity back.
Wow. And banks usually will try to take it back?
Well, listen,
be safe, right?
Yes, to be safe, number one, and especially for business owners. Business owners need to understand this. When you have lines of credit with lending institutions, say you got a $300,000 line of credit for your business, that line can be shut down at any time. The bank can just decide you could have been paying on time, had no blemishes on your record. A bank could say, we've got too much money out there. We got too many open credit lines. They can just reduce your line. And a lot of times the language in the documents that you sign that nobody ever reads says that that if you have bank accounts with them, that if they're trying to get their capital back, that they have the right to pull that money from that account. Right. Okay. I have seen it happen over and over and over again. It happened a lot in 2008 the bank. So all of a sudden you had a business line with B of A, and not only did they close your line and reduce your line down to what you owed, but in addition to that, they said, "Oh, you got some money. There's $100,000 sitting over here in your B of A account," and all of a sudden you get a notice that $100,000 just got wired out of your account.
Mm.
And it was like, "Oh yeah, well you didn't read the language. It says in there that we could do this." And you'll just be stuck. So you have to be aware. Institutions are not going to tell you that they can make that type of play. So you have to be aware, and you have to be very strategic. If you borrow the money, put it in a safe place, put it in another account where nobody can put their hands on it. Because you're responsible for you making it through this thing. However, you got to make it through. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, you motivated me last time we had you on, because I had a life insurance policy, but you was flowing on that life insurance policy. I actually called my agent and I upped my life insurance severely. And I was really worried because of this day and time. I could imagine if I got the virus, I got sick. I wanted to make sure not only my family was taken care of, we had a little generational wealth. Just go into that life insurance again, how important it is for our people.
So the first thing is what I really want everybody to do. I mean, like literally do an assessment of what are you really worth in numeric terms, and let's leave the retirement accounts, the equity and property. Let's leave that all to the side. Let's just talk in terms of income. All right. Let's say you're a person making $70,000 a year and you are 45 years old, so you're expecting to work at least another 20 years, okay? Your household, your family is looking for that 70,000 over the next 20 years, right? That's $1.4 million that is expected at a minimum, right? In your household, because you expect to make at least what you're making now every year for the rest of your life, and hopefully a whole lot more. Okay. So the reality is that if your family's still going to need that money, why is the average person out here actually insured for $50,000 to $75,000? What is that going to pay for? Is that going to pay a house off? Is that going to provide income? See, the number one thing when you're insuring a life, right? What you're really insuring is your lifetime income, okay? And I'll tell you how you know this. If you go out right now and you step off the curb and you get hit by a drunk driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
When, it'll be very sad that you passed away, but your heirs or your spouse is going to go find themselves a lawyer, and they're going to sue that individual and their insurance company that hit you. And guess where they're going to start the lawsuit? They're going to say, Everett was making X a year. He was this many years old. This is how much money, this is how much of his lifetime income we just lost. That lawsuit, using that $70,000 example again, 20 years left to work, that lawsuit starts at $1.4 million and goes up from there. Okay? So why would you walk into court and say, I just lost $1.4 million, and so I'm suing this person for killing my loved one for $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million. But then if the judge said, well, how much was Everett insured for? Oh, he was insured for $50,000.
Right.
It's like, so now, normally when people hear you need $1 million life insurance policy, people hear dollar signs. Oh my God, that premium must be out of this world, right? Nothing could be further from the truth.
Exactly. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
It's not bad at all.
Shocked.
I mean, when you really, bruh, listen, I'm telling you, like, even at this age, now there's different types of life insurance, because there's term, which is just death protection, and then there is cash value life insurance. I'm the biggest advocate for cash value life insurance. But you start where you can start from a financial standpoint. Get the term to cover what your real need is.
Right.
If you really need $2 million, get yourself $2 million in what is called convertible term, which is a term policy that you can convert over to whole life when you have more income, right? That's very, very, very important. So there's regular term, there's convertible term, and there's cash value, right? And then there's 4 or 5 different types of cash value insurance. I only deal with whole life insurance. That's the only type of insurance I will buy and whatnot. And I'll only buy convertible term when I need to cover a large amount of money. I'll only buy convertible term that converts to a whole life policy, okay? Now, a person 45 years old might go out and be able to get $1 million in coverage for less than $200 a month, okay? Now, you've got your Toyota sitting outside, you got your BMW sitting outside, and you're paying $170, $220 a month for auto insurance in case you have a car accident. But you ain't spending $200 to get
Right.
$1 million plus in coverage to cover the thing that makes all the other things possible, which is your life.
Right.
It is crucial. We have got to not just stop. We talk about, oh, such and such died, he didn't have any life insurance. Now people gotta, ask people for money to bury him and all that. I don't care nothing about that, right? That is what it is. This only thing burial policies do is make morticians rich, right? And I'm not knocking morticians. I'm just saying that's not the real need there. The real need is you have responsibilities.
Exactly.
We have spouses, we have households, we have children. We have legacies. And when you're going to work making money and you're not taking your first dollars and investing in your legacy, listen, all insurance money is 100% tax-free. If you got $10 million in life insurance money, your heirs get it 100% tax-free. Nobody knows they have it. They don't have to report it. Right? And they can build on it. And not only should you have it, your kids should have it. Every life is that valuable. Now, when you really understand how this works, the most valuable asset you have, when you really understand insurance, you can teach your kids the most valuable asset they have is their youth. Because see, $1 million or $2 million in coverage for you costs one thing, it costs them half that amount.
Mm-hmm.
So if $2 million is costing you $200 a month, it's costing them $75.
Exactly.
That's the best use of $75 that they could have. Why?
Yeah.
Because if you're an African American, guess what? Normally, you have degenerative health. By the time you hit 40, high blood pressure, this, that, and the third, which then gets your policy rated, right? When you go to apply for a policy, they say, Everett, how tall are you? You say, oh, I'm 5'11". They say, okay, well, how much do you weigh? If you tell them anything over 190, they're going to say, okay, well, I can't get you a preferred policy. Let me see if I can get you a regular, or it may be rated, and you can get rated on different levels. And now, me and you can have the same policy because I'm not on any medication, because I don't weigh over whatever this scale is they're using, and this, that, and the third, because I haven't had any maladies yet, right? I get a different premium than you do at the same age, okay? So your youth you insure yourself with permanent insurance in your youth, because that policy just builds and builds and builds. And at a certain point, if you get a policy when you're young, the thing will pay for itself ultimately. If you get like a cash value policy when you're young, in your 20s and stuff, that thing will pay for itself. By the time you get in your 40s and 50s, that thing will pay for itself. But I will tell you this.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to piggyback.
No, I was gonna say,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark. Go.
No. I was just going to say, the one thing is that what people don't tell you, and why they don't promote this heavily, is that people don't understand that the real equalizing factor in the society is insurance. Most of the wealth of these families, when you hear the word trust fund, a trust fund is just a fancy word for such and such died and his insurance policy paid off, and it didn't go to his heirs, it went to a fund, and the money off of that money goes to his heirs. That's a trust fund. I died, $10 million went into a trust for my heirs. The interest on that at 7% a year on 10 million is being distributed. A 700,000 a year is being distributed to my heirs and will be for the rest of time. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There's nothing that will ever stop that. It will be distributed for the rest of time. And I'm telling all of my heirs, all of you, while you're young, make that your first and best investment. Why? Because when you look at it, you think about the numbers. Think about investing $150 a month in $1 million policy, and you were 30 years old. So you're investing $1,800 a year. In a decade, you're investing $18,000. In 2 decades, you invested $36,000, right? Okay, so now you're saying that in 4 decades, I'd be $72,000 into a policy that if I died anytime in the next 4 decades would pay out $1 million tax-free. How do you lose money on that investment?
Right.
Right? How do you lose money on that investment? And then if it had been a cash value policy, the cash in the policy would have built up to more than the premiums that I paid. So and effectively, that cash value policy would have actually been completely free. See, we're not given that game early enough in the cycle. So we're told about this when we're 50, when we're 60. And the number one thing you think when you really understand how this works is, damn, I wish I knew this when I was 20. It wouldn't have cost nothing. It would cost nothing. Absolutely nothing, you know, and you can buy a small cash value policy, right, to set up a base. But if you need more insurance, like you could buy a $500,000 cash value policy because that was affordable, and then you could buy another $1.5 million, $2 million in term because that was affordable, right? And combined, you got the $2 million coverage, but ultimately you can convert to that other policy when you have more capital. I'm telling you, it's a powerful, powerful, powerful tool, and it's the wealth that builds these families. So when you hear people talk about these trust fund babies, you know, and it ain't nothing magical about it. It ain't nothing but life insurance.
You know, it's funny, and I want to talk about that a little later, but just to piggyback off of how you started the conversation, talking about assess not only your financial, but your health. When I went and I updated my policy, the first thing she said was after a certain amount, you got to go to this doctor. And I had to take blood and a urine test. And,
Absolutely.
you know, I was like, what's the urine test for? It's a life insurance. I'm healthy. And she's like, no, we want to make sure. And I've heard a lot of people get denied. So that's just crazy. That's just crazy.
Make sure you don't have high cholesterol, high blood pressure. They ask you, do you smoke or don't you? And, you know, some people lie, but it's in your blood, it's in your urine and what have you. You know, all of these things, they want to make sure you don't have, you know, it was a big thing. It isn't really that big a thing anymore, but you want to make sure you don't have AIDS and all this kind of stuff, right? That used to be that used to be a big thing because that used to be something people died of, you know, just a little while ago. Now, you know, everybody got the Magic Johnson, so everybody lives through that now. But yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to take that physical and see. These are the things when people start talking about why you want to be healthy, why you want to be in shape and stuff like that. They don't tell you that not being healthy means that you're going to have to leave $1 million less to your kids because you can't qualify for it. Right? Like, you know, that you can't qualify for it. I had a lot of professional athletes as clients at one point, and most of them, I started dealing with them after they were retired. And a lot of them could not get standard policies. So imagine you're strong, built like an Adonis and the whole nine, right? You're playing professional football, but you can't get a policy because there's very few people who have played sports long term that are not on medications for the rest of their life.
Right.
So regardless of what they look like, when you say, oh, you say to the average person, that's retired from playing ball, ask them how many surgeries they've had. Ask them how many medications they're on for the pain pills, for their joints, for their knees, for da-da-da. By the time you get done with all of that, what happens is on the larger policies, right? Mm-hmm. They're pulling your medical record and they're looking at your medical record and they're like, oh, Everett, you used to play for the Ravens. Okay, you had like 8 surgeries. Think about a guy like Shannon Sharp.
Right.
You know what Shannon Sharp looks like. Right. Shannon Sharp, looks like a Mack truck. Right. But Shannon Sharp has had a lot of surgeries. I don't know it to be true, but I'm almost certain, based on all of my experience with every NFL player that I've ever had as a client, he's probably on some medications for the rest of his life because of football injuries. And the funny thing is that you can have those lifetime injuries and lifetime medications even if you never made it to play pro ball. You could have just played in college.
Right.
You could have been like, oh yeah, I used to play at Maryland and da-da-da-da, and but you got hurt and you'll be on that for the rest of your life, whether you go pro or not. So this is why our youth is very important. I tell you, the ultimate reparations, Everett, is if every African American in this country had at least $1 million life insurance policy to pay to their heirs when they die.
That would be good.
That would be a game.
That would be a game changer.
That would be a game changer. Like when they start talking about this reparations thing, I'm like, yo, let everybody get every single life. Let everybody get a mill that can only go to their heirs.
Right. Because
it's tax free, right? And it's a guaranteed event. Ain't none of us getting out of this thing alive, right? Now
that's very interesting that what you said. I never even think of that.
Ain't nobody getting out of this thing alive, but that's okay. We can't, that's the rules of this game.
Right.
We came into it knowing what it was, but I'm saying, I think I said to you on the last show, I've had more than $1 million worth of life insurance since I was, 21.
Yeah.
And the simple fact was, I just refused to die and somebody not get paid, dude. I can't rest.
Yeah, that's that one. When you dropped it, I was like, man, I need to just up it just to be safe. Not only make sure if something happens, my wife and everything.
I mean, dude, what does it mean? What do the houses, the cars, the this, the da-da-da, what does it mean to then not have stroked a check for a couple $100 a month to make sure you didn't die broke? You know what I mean? That you didn't leave your heirs broke. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. That's huge. It's huge. So no, and in this pandemic, listen, we're up to what, almost 100,000 people?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Regardless of race or ethnicity or age or whatever, there's 100,000 people that's not alive today that 120 days ago, they weren't anticipating not being here.
Right.
Right? That if 100,000 families had gotten a check, it would have gotten a huge tax-free check. It would have made this tragedy easier to deal with.
True.
That's all.
True.
Money ain't everything, but when you can choose, I don't know how we were convinced to insure. I know people got insurance on their pets. I know people got insurance on their cars. They got insurance on their houses, and it's perfectly logical to them.
Insurance on the pets?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of most people who have pets, they'll get the insurance because the surgeries on it. I don't know if you've ever had a dog. I don't do pets, but you know what? When you take the dog to the vet and the vet tells you that this dog needs surgery or medication, what that costs?
Yeah.
Like, oh, Everett, yeah, your dog has whatever. We're gonna do this little procedure on him. It's gonna be like $2,300. Yeah, they have the it's I can't remember what the thing called. It's like a thing where you could even, if your dog needs a procedure and it's like $2,000, you could sign up and pay it in payments. They'll give you a payment plan on. It's like a credit card for pet surgeries and all that kind of stuff. You get it.
Wow.
You go right to PetSmart and stuff like that. I have lots of clients with pets, and they financing dog surgeries and cat operations and all kind. I'm like, man, this is it's serious. I say all of that to simply say, if you bought a house and the mortgage company said you're going to have to, for us to lend you this money, you have to have homeowners insurance. Mm-hmm. And you said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And the state said, you want to drive a car here, you can have a car, but you're going to have auto insurance. You can't be driving around on the road without auto insurance to protect you and anybody else that is exposed to you, right? Right. But the number one thing is your life, right? And you're investing absolutely nothing in ensuring that income. And that's the thing that makes all other things possible. So no, we got to really get serious about that, because we just don't know what can happen. And I promise you this, the day you have adequate insurance is the day you even stop worrying about stuff like that. Like, I've never worried about, I'd like to be here, brother. Trust me, I ain't trying to go anywhere. Right. But I'm not worried about leaving my parents in a bad situation, not leaving some cash so my brother's kids are straight and this, that, and the third, and da-da-da. I'm not worried about that kind of stuff. I took care of that. I write the check. It gets drafted out the account automatically. It's handled no matter what else happens, so, you don't got to run. Nobody got to run to the bank when they find out I'm dead. It's like, right. Yo, all you got to do is run to the safe deposit box and get the papers.
That's
it's like,
right.
What's in the bank and what's in the papers is two totally different things. You know what I mean? And those papers are way more valuable.
Yeah.
There's some bricks in that safe, so just understand that opportunity, there's nothing keeping you from living that type of life and doing that for your family.
Generational wealth. There's no reason
anybody out here don't go to work and spend money on all these other things, and don't make your first priority ensuring that the plan actually happens. Only way you can ensure that the plan you got for your family actually happens is that the money is there.
Right. Before I go forward, I want to just ask you this real quick. Why is it that people, especially Black people in our community, why is it that they tend not to get life insurance? Is it a psychological thing because they're saying they're putting themselves in the grave, or what is it? No, they're unaware?
No, because life insurance was taught to us as death insurance.
Yeah.
Right? So that's all we associated with. We admire all of these wealthy people, but we've never taken any real time to study how they got wealthy.
Right.
Right? So they don't know, oh yeah, the market crashed back in 48 when there was the Great Depression, and JCPenney used his money that was in his life insurance policy to the cash that was in it to buy all these stocks, and that's how he blew up. They don't understand that that's where Walt Disney got the money to start. Walt Disney was out of his insurance policy, right? They don't understand that the guy who owned Enron that had gotten sued and whatnot, and he was being, his name is Kenneth something. This dude, life insurance is also, you can't be sued for that money. So you could have millions inside of a life insurance policy, like in the cash value side of a life insurance policy, and it can't even be taken from you. It's not reported anywhere, and it doesn't go, I don't care if you got $1 million in cash in your policy, it's not being reported on your taxes, right, as an asset. So nobody can see it, okay? Ken Lay was his name, right? Okay. Kenneth Lay, he was the CEO of Enron, right?
Right.
He died, all this money, tens of millions of dollars went to his wife, completely tax-free, even though he was a stone cold criminal and whatnot. You understand what I'm saying? We don't understand how the vehicles work. 75% of all the cash value life insurance in this country belongs to the wealthy, not because of what it costs, but what it does that other people don't know about. So what people do is they sell us these BS concepts like A.L. Williams, buy term and invest the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ask people statistically for term policies, only 2% of term policies are ever cashed in. Because what happens is you outlive the term, and then when the new term comes up, you're so old. Like if you bought it at 40 and it was a 30-year, you're 70. If you try to get insurance at 70, the premium is prohibitive.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay,
right.
I bought it at 40. I was paying $200 a month. Oh, I want to keep the same coverage between 70 and 100. Okay, that's going to be $2,500 a month.
Yeah, gotcha.
You're like, whoa, I can't afford that. And so there it goes. Versus if I had bought a $500 a month cash value policy back when I was 40 and paid it for 20 or 30 years, the policy would pay for itself. I wouldn't even pay for it for the rest of the time that I was alive. It would just sit there and grow. So being taught how to use the vehicle and what the vehicle is really for and how the vehicle works, how it, why the wealthy set it up to circumvent the only life insurance was actually made to circumvent tax law. Right? Wealthy were like, hey, I need to pass my money on, and estate taxes go on. So if I got $10 million, Everett, you're my son. If I leave you $10 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Claim it in the estate, you got to pay estate taxes on my money and this, that, and the third, blah, 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 right? Okay. But if I leave you a $10 million life insurance policy,
it's $10 million.
$10 million, tax-free, it's yours.
And they can't even sue me for it.
No, that's the law. I mean, that's why they own 75% of it. That's why they own 75% of all the cash value policies that are out there. That's the game. It's like if you don't know what is actually if you don't know what's actually going on, you're not going to make the investment, right? Right. It's like so we're not making the investment because we don't know how it works. It's not really that deep, but we just are we're fooled into thinking things work in finance in a completely different way than they work. Right.
So for all the people listening, please go out there and get some life insurance. If you're just tuning in, I have my man Mark Fuller, manager of wealth, and please forward this information out. Let's get the analytics and the information out. Hit the like button and the share on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Bam. You know how we do. Mark, we are having this pandemic. It's a lot of free time on everybody's hands. Anything positive you can tell them to be productive? Maybe, just what could we be doing right now that you would recommend?
So a couple of things. One, I'm going to tell you, I see it on your show all the time. I'm always telling people, if you don't have a business, start one.
Yes.
And I'm going to encourage you to do 2 things. Number one, take this time, and if you don't have perfect personal and business credit, start working on it and getting it done. Start sending the letters you need to send and doing the things you need to do to get your credit tight and whatever. Because all credit is, we talk about credit and we always think about it in terms of buying things, right? In terms of, buying a house, getting a car and all this kind of stuff. I think of it in terms of just access to capital to put in business.
Yeah.
Right? Because business is arbitrage. It is, I put $10 in marketing in, I got this number of clients and I made $100 back. And then you just want to keep doing that arbitrage. Well, ultimately you need capital to put in to that situation. And one of the things I'll tell people to do is study things like what we're just talking about, finance, tax. Just read simple books. If it's too complex, it won't work. I don't believe in the complex. I believe in very, very, very simple things that have got to be true in a lot of situations, right? So this is a great time to get some reading done that you haven't done before. This is a great time to do some paperwork you haven't done before. This is a great time to set up a business. If you don't know what business you want to set up, get around some people, even virtually, that are doing the type of thing that you would like to do and become a student.
Yes.
Become a student. People want money, but you ask them how much time they spent studying how to get money, and they're like, none. Well, that's not going to work. Like you really have to invest the time. Right now is the time to invest the time and really get your business started, get your business credit set up. That's extremely important as well, because the risk is significantly less if you can set up proper business credit. And that's one of the things that we do with a lot of our clients. If you can set up business credit and access capital in your company name, it takes the risk off you personally.
Yes.
It takes the risk off you personally. Some things work out, some things don't. I have a whole litany of advice around things that you should do in business and how to protect yourself. The reason why I know is because I've been in business since I've been 17. I've made every mistake that everybody is going to they're going to make. You know what I mean? I have not done things perfectly and what have you. And the things that should have been in corporate names, I wasn't prepared for the last downturn in the economy. 2008, I took a massive 7-figure hit. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, absolutely fell off a cliff to, close to
that's a big hit.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, oh, look, there it goes, up in flames. But the reality is, it taught me, it's like, I call it paid tuition, right? Mm-hmm. But don't you pay the tuition that I paid. If I could tell you, they say, some people learn from a wise person. They say learns from, their own mistakes, but a really, really wise person learns from the mistakes of others. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's just things, there's things that I could tell you not to do in ways to set things up that something like this. I mean, again, like I said, 120 days ago, we were not thinking about this moment that we find ourselves in right now.
Without a doubt.
It didn't even feel like a possibility. So, you right now, and one thing I want to mention, I see a lot of people making some really, I'm going to call them unwise moves. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to send you an article. It's a piece that I wrote, probably one of the biggest pieces on my blog in the last 10 years, the most read piece. It's called How to Move Furniture Like Koreans, right? Okay. Have you ever seen that piece? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I never saw that one.
Okay, I send you this piece, but
I definitely got to get that one.
But I want to share some game with you real quick.
Okay. So
back in the day, I used to live on Rolling Road and Dogwood in this place called Rolling Wind, right? Mm-hmm. It was like they had just built it. It was really nice, new, and the whole nine. And I used to go across the street and take my clothes to this Korean dry cleaner, right? And so dude was like, we developed a decent relationship. And, Julian and Teresa, they take their stuff over there. That's my brother and his wife. And my parents, sometimes they would drop their stuff off over there or whatever. So he sees me one day. He says, Mark, look, do me a favor. He says, can you come back to the shop around 7:00? And I need to talk to you about something. I said, oh, okay, no problem. I'll come through and see you. I come back at 7. He's closed the shop. We're standing in the front of the shop. And I was like, what'd you need? He was like, hey, do me a favor. He was like, can you pick that couch up and move it to the back of the shop?
Really?
I was like, what? I said, I'm sorry. You want me to pick this couch up and move it to the back of the shop? I was like, did you call me here to move your couch? And he could see I was getting like really agitated, right? He was like, no. He said, well, I could call the guys that are in the back working, because he had all these other guys from his country in the back working. I could call them and they could help us, and I could help, and we could move the couch to the back or whatever. And I said, but you got all these guys here, and what did you call me for? He's like, well, that's what I want. He said, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. He was like, one person trying to move a couch, very, very hard. A lot of people moving a couch, very easy.
Right.
And he said, people think that when he said they think that when I came to this country, I came here with some kind of money or this, that, and the third. He said, me, my two brothers, my mother and my father came here. We were broke. He said, we all lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. Me and my two brothers, he said, we were grown men. He said, we came at like 24, 25, 26. He said, that's how old he and his brothers were. Mm-hmm. And he said, and then his older parents. He said, we all had these menial jobs where we made $200 a week each. He said, we would go to our jobs, and me and my brothers, we would all give our $200 each, $600 a week to my mother. And my mother and father would have their money, and they would use their money to pay the bills, and they would save our $600 a week, right? He said, so after the first year, we had $30,000 saved up. After the second year, he said, we had $60,000 saved up, and we got the first business for the oldest brother. He was like, then we were still in this apartment doing the same thing for 2 more years, saved up 60, got the second business for the second brother. He said, we did the same thing for 2 more years. He said, now I'm telling you, we were not 15, 16, we were grown men, in this, in this little room together and blah, blah, blah. And after the third year, then the youngest brother, got his business or whatever, right? He said, after that 6 years and setting those 3 businesses up, we built off of those businesses. He said, my parents never worked another day, right? He was like,
wow.
He was like, that's how we got ourselves out of poverty. He said, I called you, he said, because I met he said, I see you, I see how you move. He's like, I met your brother and his wife, and I met mommy and daddy, and they're very nice. He knew my parents or whatever. He was like, I see what you're doing. He's like, I just want you to hold that in your head. He said, in America, he said, a lot of families can't be successful. Mm-hmm. He said, because too early on, everybody has their own stuff. So you're paying 3 mortgages or 3 rents and a whole bunch of car payments and a whole bunch of bills, and all that wealth is being sucked out of your family and into the society before you establish anything that's income producing, right? They stayed together until they had put 3 income producing assets in place. And they sacrificed, being young men out dating and doing their thing and blah, blah, blah. And they sacrificed, going off on their own and all that stuff. But it was only 6 years. It was only 6 years. It wasn't a lifetime. And he sent me around to go, his other brothers owned dry cleaners in other areas. He sent me around to meet his brothers. Okay. And I met and this is like 94, 95, something like that, 1994, 1995 or whatever. And it was very inspiring what he said. It was one of those things, though, that I wish I had learned at 10, 11, 12 years old in terms of mentality, right? Because I would have done a few things differently. Right. And we would have done things differently as a family and stuff like that in terms of how to really build wealth. We'd have put some other things in place first. Right. Let's put a business in place before everybody has a home and this, that, and the third, because all that is a bill. Right. Right. So that piece kind of details that or whatever, but it's a piece of my blog, and it's called How to Move Furniture Like Koreans and whatnot. And it's like had been very widely read both around the country and around the world and what have you, because I think it's probably, to me, it was the most instructive story. And I'm watching that as this pandemic happens, as kids are graduating from college and different things like that, and they're in a rush to get the apartments and different things like that, and a rush to move out on their own and create their own bills and to get their cars and all of these things. And now ain't the time.
You're right.
Now it's not the time. Now is not the time. Now they could be at home, they could be stacking, and you got to think about how to be productive and what's the best use of the family's income. Right. Because you're the only people that can protect each other. And listen, if your kid makes the wrong move and then they're out there and then they lose their job, they're going to call you and say, Dad, I need you to help me pay my rent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's not necessarily helping them. It's just helping their landlord.
Right.
Right? Because you got it, because you got a room, right? And you could rebalance things from here. I got you, right? But it's easier for me I'd rather have you for food and electricity in a room than have you for $1,500 in somebody else's pocket, and you're still broke, and you still need electricity in the room and everything else over there. So these are the conversations that we need to start to have as a group of people, because we are putting too much money into the society too early in the form of houses, cars, apartments, and individualistic things, and it's draining us. And that's what has us not prepared for this moment. Whereas, we laugh when we see, 10 people of another nationality coming out of a house.
Mm-hmm.
But can you imagine how easy it is for them to pay their bills?
Yeah. Yeah. And I never even looked at it that way.
You never see 10 skinny people coming out of a house they're eating good.
Yeah.
It's like so. Yeah, that had a profound impact on me. But I see that is not a conversation that happens a lot in our culture.
That's very interesting. And your blog, that's on your website?
Yeah, if you go to managerofwealth.com, in the lower right-hand corner, all the blog entries are on there. It takes you right to the blog. But it's a piece called "How to Move Furniture Like Koreans."
That's a funny title, but that's very deep.
Yeah, I knew it would catch. I knew it would catch people, and I knew that people would think that it was going to be some xenophobic, oh, Koreans do this, Koreans always take it, but it wasn't. No,
right.
Some of the best game anybody ever gave me in life was that Korean gentleman, and he thought for whatever reason, he was, from our interactions, he was inspired to want to teach me that lesson. You know what I mean? Because I was like, why like I didn't know I didn't know whatever. I was like, okay, cool. And but when he did that, it made a profound impact on how I began to think about how to move through this society. For sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Man, you're dropping some gems. I'm talking to Mark Fuller. Mark, I just got a few more questions for you, man. You always bless me with the knowledge. I wanted to ask you a twofold question. People, especially young people, but not even young, because I feel I'm very young when it comes to finances. I got older and I got hip to the game. I wish I knew this when I was 18 and 19. I'd be a millionaire. I'll be a multimillionaire. I'll be like Jordan. It's funny how things work. Talk about who people should listen to in their lives about getting advice. I think that's very important. If not a mentor, who should they keep around them? And you had mentioned something about avoiding groupthink. So a twofold question. What is a groupthink, and who should they have as far as getting advice around them?
So when I say avoid groupthink, this society is one where a lot of our information is derived from media. A lot of it it's derived from a centralized media. Mm-hmm. So you're either really listening to CNN or you're really listening to Fox. That's what the majority of the society is doing, right? Mm-hmm. And everything is really divided between those two viewpoints, both of which are very self-serving and meant to sell advertising. They're not meant to inform. They're not meant to empower. They're meant to titillate and cause you to be stuck. When you're watching the number of people who died run up on one side of the screen, you know what I mean? As this, how CNN has it set up. So this is how many people were sick. This is how many people died. This is da da da. And
right.
And we all I have to stop myself from watching the news for weeks at a time so I can keep my head on straight, right? Because I would sit there and an hour has evaporated, right? Of me staring at the screen, listening to Cuomo. He's so super charming, right? But he's so cool, and he represents the viewpoint that you have, and he don't like Trump, and you don't like Trump. So you know what I mean? You could be hour gone, 2 hours gone, right? Right? But when you stop and think, like, what did I get out of that? What happened in my life? What was I able to take from that? Nothing. But you got me to stay here and watch this, and you got me to watch all the commercials, right? And so, one, you can't keep having conversations all day, every day with people who are drawn into that. And they're just saying to you the same thing that you already believe. It's an echo chamber. It's like, yeah, I know you don't like Trump. I didn't like him either. It's not like there's nothing he's going to be able to do to get me to vote for him in November. I'm not even considering it. You see what I'm saying? So therefore, it doesn't matter what else he does. It doesn't matter what crazy thing he says today or tomorrow or whatever. So my time watching him say the next crazy thing is kind of a waste. You follow what I'm saying? So you got to step away from that and ask yourself this question. What is my plan? What do I want out of life? And who's on that type of time? So I've been spending a lot of time paying attention to, there's a brother out in San Diego. His name is Billy Jean. He has this company called Billy Jean is Marketing.
I know what you're talking about. He has some phenomenal ads, I would say.
Yes, yes.
Make you pay attention to him.
He's one of the best direct digital marketers in the world. And he's rivaled only by another brother who lives in San Diego named Vince Reed, right? Vince Reed is the best lead generation guy in the world. We are going into a world where everything is going to be transacted over the internet and this, that, and the third. If you claim, and I don't care what business it is, if you claim you want to be in business, you have to learn how to market online. You have to learn sales psychology. What saved me as a young person of 20 years old was, and if you were in my house right now, there's a library downstairs of nothing but books, and 90% of those books are sales and marketing books. I had to learn sales psychology and different things like that. And back then, the only way you could do that, because it wasn't the internet age, you had to go to Barnes and Noble. I used to go to Louis Bookstore Cafe down on Charles, go to all these places, and I just bought books, and I studied Tom Hopkins and Les Brown and Jim Rohn and all of these people that taught you how to talk, how to listen, all these things, right? These guys are on the cutting edge of how to do business online, of how to generate customers for anything you could possibly imagine, right? The process of it. Those are tutorials that are worth taking. Those are tutorials that are worth investing in. That's what I would be doing with my time right now. Okay. Because everybody has a dream about what they want to do. And I find that people spend more energy figuring out what they want their office to look like, what the furniture should look like, what the lighting should look like, what the sign outside should look like, what their employee's uniform should look like. And then the whole thing is set up, and you open the doors, and it's no traffic. And it's no traffic because you didn't put any energy or time or money into studying how to generate traffic, how to generate leads, how to bring people, how to put your words together properly so that people will respond, how to run Facebook ads or YouTube ads or Instagram ads and all those things. Those guys are teaching those things, and they're brothers, and they're sharp, and they're hilarious. They have really good personalities, and they're really good human beings, and they're very well intentioned. So yeah, Billy Jean is Marketing and Vince Reed. I would encourage everybody to start to follow those guys and pay attention to and pay attention to them and people like them that are on a progressive path and not being sucked into the conversation that's only Trump versus Biden, Democrat versus Republican, right? System that doesn't work for us on the left versus system that don't work for us on the right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, that would be my biggest advice, and that's the advice that I follow. I'm constantly utilizing those guys' services. I'm constantly taking tutorials and then implementing what I learned from them.
Now, you had just knowing you and talking to you, you have a lot of don'ts. I'm going to drop a couple of don'ts to you. One of the first one was don't run with a pack of losers. Go into that a little bit.
Yeah. We are an emotional people culturally, and so when we don't like to evaluate each other for whether we're productive or not, right? But the old adage, and it doesn't matter what your nationality is, it's true. If you look at the 5 people closest to you, you from an income standpoint and everything else are the average of those 5 people, right? So if the people around you aren't trying to achieve, if they're not building, if they're not having elevated conversation, then no matter what level you think you're on, you'll be pulled down to that level.
Right.
Right. And understand that it's not saying don't deal with people who have less than you. That's not the conversation. The conversation is do not hang with people who aspire to have less than you.
Right.
Don't hang with people who don't care about that. Don't hang with people who can't say to you, hey, we should be doing this. It can't bring any value to you, and you can't bring any value to them. Because if you do that, you all are keeping each other stuck. And sometimes, Everett, if you're in a group of people who are not progressive and you break out and you go do something progressive, those individuals, they'll keep doing what they're doing. They'll still be at the same bar every Friday, doing whatever and yada, yada, yada. You're over here doing your thing. And one by one, those that really have a burning desire and see you accomplishing something will start to be drawn toward what you're doing, and they'll start to ask you some questions and start to move in a different direction, right? They'll ask you, how are you doing what you're doing? You say, well, first thing is I can't be in the bar every Friday. I got to do this. I got to do that. Da, da, da. These are the disciplines. If you want to exhibit those disciplines, you're going to get the same result. It's almost guaranteed, right? So a lot of times the way to lead people out is to leave them. And that's a hard pill to swallow for some people.
It's tough.
But if you don't get yourself around a progressive group doing progressive things that you're interested in, I can't tell you how to live your life, but I'm saying if you really are interested in really accomplishing something, get around people who are really interested in accomplishing something. And when you do that, the other people that you're associated with, the other people that you're related to, right? Because that's the other, it's like I don't have a lot of talk. I won't even kick it with relatives that aren't, going anywhere.
Right.
I wish everybody the best, but I just don't have any time for it because things are too serious out here. And they didn't just get serious with coronavirus. You know what I mean?
Right.
If they were serious before that. So that's what I mean by don't hang with losers. I mean, really get around some progressive people. You will cut your time frames. When you said earlier, oh, I wish I had known this, years ago and this and the third. You can make a leap forward light years by just being in the right circle.
Yes. Right?
It doesn't take, I made my first $1 million sitting in a coat closet making phone calls because my business partner that convinced me to start a mortgage company, he was a millionaire, but he didn't put any money into the business. But his mentality, his work ethic, being around him, and his belief in my abilities to do what he told me I could do, I didn't want to disappoint him. So I sat in the back of the store making phone calls to sell people, to book appointments for people for FHA and VA mortgages right down on Charles Street and whatnot. And I did that until it started to make some decent money. And then I decided I hated sitting in that coat closet making those calls. So I had to learn direct mail. And I learned direct mail. And then direct mail grew the sales. I grew the skills making the calls. Right. But then I grew the sales with the direct marketing. And so I went from 29,000 one year to 275 the next year to 750 the next year.
That's a big jump.
Yeah. But so again, it's 36 months. It's 36 months, right?
Right.
Based on association. and concentrating all of my energy and learning what it was that I needed to learn, right? And so during that time, consequently, I missed a lot of parties and and whatever, but you know, it got me there. You know,
Right.
that's what truly got me there was that. So just that one association.
How about this one? This one I suffered from. And when you were talking about video games, I thought about it often when I'm coaching my kids and the parents will be like, he's always on the video game. I'm like, it's not him, but you're in a video game, time goes by and you become less productive. That's what I tell the
Right.
kids. You mentioned something though, do not watch too much television. Go into that a little bit for me.
Yeah. Well, again, if you write out your goals and your plan, and then you match your activities back to it, you ask the question, what is watching this going to do for where I'm trying to go? Because we spend a lot of time watching people that already have the things that we aspire to have.
That's right.
But, like, and I'll give you an example. Like, my favorite shows on TV would be shows like Million Dollar Listing, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like this TV show about real estate agents that it's like a reality TV show about real estate agents actually selling expensive real estate in New York City, in Miami, in San Francisco, and in LA, right? There's just 4 different iterations of the show. It's like Real Housewives or whatever. These are real people, real real estate agents selling a lot of real estate, right?
Okay.
And to me, it's like a psychological study of sales technique, of understanding what's going on in real estate markets and stuff like that. So for me, I'm getting something from that that I think that I can use in certain situations or whatever, but I rarely watch very much that I can't use, and I don't put a lot of hours into it. So, I might get a good hour and a half of television a day in, and that might be a bit too much. Sometimes I'll either have CNBC and the stock market on in the background during the course of the day, and all that's propaganda too. So that's
right.
That's a show, right? That's just that running all day and the ticker underneath the screen, but it ain't got nothing to do with making money. But it's an illusion of it.
Exactly. You're correct.
You're looking at it like, all these people trading on inside information, but you're supposed to gather some knowledge that this ticker going across the screen is enlightening you to. It's a joke. It's a joke. I don't put money in the stock market, and I don't ever suggest anybody else do either, because there's a difference between investing and trading. Now, trading is a business and is a skill. If you get the skills to be a trader, then I say that's great. You can learn that skill, and that's fine. But to randomly give my money to a broker to put into the market and say these things should go up, and if you just do it over the course of time, these things have averaged like 10%. If that is your pitch, no, thank you. Because the most proven way to make money ever is, number one, have money when other people don't, right? Because then everything gets discounted and you can get everything at a discounted price. You could have never invested a nickel for the last 10 years and only stacked your money up. And you could be sitting there and you have $100,000, and now when the housing market collapses in 6 months, or the foreclosures go up because of all these people that deferred the loans and can't catch up, and the banks call the notes and they lose the houses. How many houses can you buy at 50 cents on the dollar?
Right.
Now that you got great credit and a lot of liquidity, right? So you can afford those down payments. $200,000 house, you need 5% down payment. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Oh, I got $100,000 sitting over here. I got $750 credit. I can make moves. All I had to do was just have money when other people didn't.
Right.
I don't have to be smart. I don't have to be no type of genius to do it. I'm still a fan of hold your money. That the society will create the opportunity
Right.
all the time, right? That's one of my things. So yeah, don't invest a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of time in sitting around watching other people live.
Here was an interesting one. You might have covered it, but I want you to go into it maybe a little deeper. When you say, don't wait for the storm to be over. Make great use of your time. Learn, research, and build. It looks like you covered that. But the next one would be a little interesting is don't avoid assessing your shortcomings.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has things that they do that are not in the direction of their goals. You have to get good at writing stuff down and holding yourself accountable as to whether you're hitting your target, right? And that's in whether that's your health goal, and you say, I weigh this, I want to weigh this, and really, I'll say this about you should treat business like you do weight loss. It's not so important to weigh yourself every day. It's more important to do the things that naturally will just make you healthier, and your body will right size itself the healthier it gets. If you're hydrated and you're walking every day and you're eating the right thing, then eventually you just end up fit, right? If you're taking fit actions, you're eating fit food, you're doing fit stuff, you end up fit. If you didn't have a scale, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You already know. Your heart rate is better. Business is exactly the same thing. If you're doing the things that you've determined produce a positive business result, generate capital, just keep doing those things, right? And hold yourself accountable for, did I make this number of phone calls? Did I do this? Did I send the letters I needed to send to create or clear up my credit? Did I do this? If you're doing all those things consistently, you end up at the result, right? And so that is critically important for us to understand that it's more important for us to do the things that you have to do to get there, and the rest of it it takes care of itself. But you gotta hold yourself accountable. But hold yourself accountable to the things, because if you hold yourself accountable to the numbers, and it's just like weight loss, right? Mm-hmm. You could have had a bad eating weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend. Everybody was partying or whatever, and this, that, and the third. You might not have done your best in terms of what you consumed that weekend, but you may have still gotten your run in and different things like that, right? You're still going in the direction of your goal. Beating yourself up every day, jumping on and off of a scale, can have negative results sometimes, right? What you really want to do is make sure you're taking those actions, because you'll correct yourself that much quicker. Monday will come and you'll be like, okay, no more hamburgers and hot dogs or whatever it was you did on Memorial Day weekend or whatever, but you're still running, you're still jumping on the bike, you're still doing whatever, and you get right back to the program. You know what I mean? So that's the key. Stick to the program once you create one, and everything else. And if you don't have one, find yourself a mentor, whether through a book, whether through online, whether the guys that I was talking about, Vince, Billy J, whatever. And if they have a program, stick to that. Just do what they give you hey, do these 10 things, do them. Right. And do them so consistently that you either prove them right or wrong. You're going to prove them right because that's what they've been doing. You know what I mean? So it's like, just do it. Sometimes when you don't have a plan, follow somebody else's plan. But follow it, because that was me. I hated cold calling, but I went to this brokerage and everybody was doing it, and I was listening to everybody, and I had studied all these sales techniques early on in my career, and I was listening to them not be able to close certain deals that I would have closed because I knew how to ask the right question, to say the right thing, and da-da-da-da. And it just pumped me up in my head. Like, I was like, oh, man, if I was on that call, when the person said this, he asked you this question. You shouldn't have answered it like that. You should have asked this, right? So even though I hated doing it, I know how to do it.
Right.
This is how all these guys were doing it. So I just did what they were doing, and I added my own little twist. When I got the client on the phone and they said, what is this? I said, oh, well, da-da-da-da. And they said the thing that I knew that they would say because I had studied, this is what a person will say when you ask them this question. It's like sales technique is like martial arts. You know what I mean? You're never surprised by what happens because what's going to happen is what happens 99% of the time.
Right.
And so, but that was from practice. And I just followed the script that somebody else had until I could develop my own. And then, I wanted people to call me. I didn't want to call anybody. So I learned direct mail. And then that's what took everything, through the roof. Yeah.
Well, I'm almost there. I got a couple more questions, and
sure.
it's another don't. And this one is a very interesting. Don't trade your life for temporary money. Go into that. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So there are so many opportunities that look like opportunities that really aren't. They actually get you stuck. And here's what I mean. So some of the most talented people I've ever met had the misfortune of getting a really good paying job, right? So Everett, you have one of the most brilliant minds I've ever seen, blah, 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 and somebody offers you the job right out of law school to go to the big firm. Mm-hmm. And you say, okay, cool. So you go to the big firm. So now here you are, 23, 24, making $150 a year, back when that was some money, right? Mm-hmm. And you didn't have too much debt or whatever. So now you're in that. So then you get into the lifestyle. You get into the guys who work in the firm lifestyle and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. And what you really had the aptitude to do, to run a company or to run your own firm and be entrepreneurial and own everything and make exponential wealth with the same time. Because see, it's only once at a time. Like you either doing it for somebody else or you're doing it for you. Now, if you don't want to do it for you, then doing it for somebody else is fine. Mm-hmm. Right? But you still got to figure out when you do that for somebody else, how to take that capital and make that money work. Because that temporary short-term, even what looks like big money, if you don't figure out how to make that money work and you don't figure out how to do something entrepreneurial, you'll always have to work for that money, right? And now you've traded your opportunity to really, when you really had the most time to study, to pursue, to try and fail and da-da-da-da, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. You've traded all of that time. So that's why most people don't become millionaires and start companies until after they're 50.
Right.
Yeah. They traded the first 25 years was they got into the work world, then they got into family life, and then it became impossible to, in their mind, because it's only mental. I don't know what's true and what's not true. But in their mind, they said, man, I got a family to take care of, so I can't jump off and go over here and pursue my dream or this, that, and the third. I got to do this thing, and it pays well, and it'll send my kids to private school, and it'll do this, and it'll do that. And so that's that temporary trade that we're making, and more people are coming to understand that it ultimately isn't worth it. Right? It ultimately isn't worth it. The early, and that's why I love a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Gary V, who he has a bunch of books, but he's a huge internet sensation. He built an online liquor store called Wine Library, and Gary's a multi-millionaire, really, really, really sharp guy. Another guy that's good to follow. But his number one message for young people is, whatever it is that's your passion, go for it now.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it now. Go for it before you have all the reasons not to, before you have all the excuses, before you have all the responsibilities and whatnot. Forget the temporary supposed security, because we now have lived long enough to know that there is no security in that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It seems like it, but you want to see somebody really scared? Watch everybody losing their jobs. The guy who could lose the $150,000 a year job is more scared than the guy who could lose the $30,000 a year job.
That's true.
You ever talk to anybody that's a laborer, and they be like, well, man, if they fire me, I don't care. I'm going to go over here and da-da-da-da. I ain't
Yeah, I'm going to be all right. Yeah.
Like, people need hands. People need somebody with a strong back. You know what I mean? I'm good. I go over, fire me from this hotel, I go over to this one or whatever. This pandemic makes a gray area because this is a different type of fallout than we've ever had before because of everything going on. But when that goes away and everybody goes back out in society, it'll absorb most of those people. But my point is, but now you take the guy who's he's not at the executive level, he's not at the managerial level, he's at the high salaried employee level, the dispensable high salaried employee level. He's shook because his car is out there, his kids are in school, the big house, the picket fence, all that is out there, and he needs every bit of the $150,000, $175,000 he got coming in to maintain it.
Right.
And if he doesn't, the fallout, at least the psychic fallout, because we get real embarrassed. We get real embarrassed when stuff happens to us that isn't really even on us. Like you didn't melt down the world economy.
Right.
But if you get crushed by it, right? And I've been there. I've lost a couple mil. I know what that is. You know what I mean? You feel some kind of way. I promise you. You feel some kind of way. There's another article on the blog that says, I think it says, $3 million isn't a lot of money, but when it's all you have, it's a lot. Yeah, it says losing $3 million isn't a lot of money, but when it's all you have, it's a lot of money. And that's a story about the $1 million house and all that stuff going up in smoke in the middle of that downturn, because where I thought I was diversified, I wasn't, because I had real estate that I owned, I had houses, I had land developments I was doing in Atlanta, I had a mortgage brokerage. At the end of the day, all of it was really one asset class. It was all real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So when the whole real estate market crashes, everything comes to a screeching halt all at the same time. And, taking cash flow out of a business is like taking the blood and oxygen out of a body.
Right.
It's just one of those things where you're like, oh, like what just happened? And you gotta figure it out. Luckily I was smart enough to go, let's get rid of every bit of it right now. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I was like, just don't do what you see so many other people do, struggle to hold on because of the pride. No. Survive.
Yeah, survive.
Survive.
That's all you can do.
The skills got you to this. Yeah, but when the skills that got you to this place still reside inside you, so therefore you don't need any of this stuff to validate your abilities and whatnot. This is whatever. Get rid of all of it and build it again, but you can build it faster, unburdening yourself from it.
That's true.
That's what I did. On a phone call, I was like, it's out of here. I called the attorney, and it's funny when you are in business and and you're doing well, and you decide that you're going to jettison everything, and you go to file bankruptcy, and you look at a number and you see that the debt number is like $4 million, and you're like, wow, that's interesting. And all you can do is laugh and be like, all right, let's make the play. I mean, at that point, I was like, look, let's go and let's figure it out. You know what I mean? But I can figure it out easier if I get this stuff off my back, because I can't turn the world economy around fast enough. I was hemorrhaging money trying to maintain all the projects and all of the stuff at the same time. It was killing me. I was like, nah, not doing that. And I'm talking about, it was killing me. And that was in the short term, because I wasn't going to allow it to go to the long term.
Right.
Like, no, I was like, this is not, if I had to look at myself as my number one client and go, this is what I would tell my client to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was the absolute positive right decision. I would do it again 100 times out of 100. And because my central mistake was, and I'll tell anybody this, my central mistake was I left my capital inside of all the property that I own. So there was a point at which there was like 3 million plus in equity in the property.
Man.
If I'd have moved that where it needed to be, and I had business partners in one large project in Atlanta, and I was trying to convince them early on when we bought the property that we should separate the equity from the property. And they were like, yeah, but that'll make the note that we have to service higher. I was like, listen, if anything goes wrong, at least we got a couple mils sitting in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I own 75% of it. So I was like, I really wanted to make sure that was there. And I couldn't convince them to listen to me. It was 4 of us, and we had to be in agreement to do that because everybody had to sign. And so number one, I'll never be in a situation where I need 3 other people to sign anything. But two, I mean, their argument was rational, except it didn't work if the scenario was different. Mm-hmm. Right? Your rational argument about keeping the low debt and not having this cash makes sense if all things are equal. But if the world implodes and they cut me off from my equity, it doesn't make sense. Now I wish it was in the bank. I'd have gone, hey, we either going to negotiate this loan or you take the property and I'll take the cash and I'll see you. Right? And it would have been what it was. So I say all of that though, brother, to say that that's a very, very, very real thing. And what we have to do is we have to evaluate where we are. We got to be honest with ourselves and what have you. And we have to do things that are consistent with our plans for what we really want for ourselves. And if it doesn't match up, then, if the people and the plan and all that stuff don't match up, then move those things out of your life until you can afford to have, unproductive friends. I can't afford to have any unproductive friends.
I feel you here. I had Mark Fuller on if you're just tuning in, CEO and manager of Wealth. Mark, I got one more don't. And this is interesting because I know a lot of people are struggling right now, not prepared for this. Don't let yourself be in this place. Let yourself be in this place right now ever again. Talk about that. How can they avoid being in a crisis of struggling and be prepared for something like this, or just being down in general?
Right. So when you want to empower yourself, and this is extremely important because you have to, the first power that any person can ever have is the power to give themselves, right? When you find yourself in a bad position, you have to take ownership of that position. Mm-hmm. I put me here, right? I put me here. Whatever decisions, opportunities I had, if I didn't take advantage of them, or I squandered them, or I made the wrong investment here or there, or I didn't save enough money, or I didn't do it, whatever. I put myself there. I had total freedom to do whatever it was that I did. I did what I did. Now this thing has happened, right, in the world, and I'm stuck. I'm in a position where I don't want to be in, but I put me here. Mm-hmm. So now I'm declaring that I won't be here ever again. How am I not going to be here again? Oh, if I didn't have enough savings, okay, I'm going to make sure I really start saving money. If a lot of this comes down to not knowing enough. I didn't invest enough time in knowing what I needed to know so I could do what I needed to do, so I could even benefit from situations like this. See, I took a lot of hits in 2008 I'm in a position to profit a lot in 2020 from the same storm because I know things I didn't know then. I'm positioned different than I was positioned then, and what have you. I'm not overburdened with a ton of overhead and different things like that, right? So this is that opportunity to really put everything on paper and take stock of where you are. And if you're constantly taking stock of where you are and you're staying liquid and you're staying conscious to what's going on, then you got to answer a question honestly. When 12 months from now, based on what actions you took between today and 12 months from now, you ask yourself a question: if a pandemic hit right now, am I in a better position or not?
Right.
If your answer is yes, you're moving in the right direction. If your answer is no, you still aren't doing what you got to do. You know, we have to be asking ourselves that question at least every 6 months. Are we progressively moving forward and taking the actions that we need to take? And you'd be surprised how quickly, once you start moving in the right direction, you'd be surprised how quickly everything changes. Mm-hmm. And quick can be 2 years, quick can be 3 years, quick can be 5 years. There's an old saying that goes, people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. You know, there's nobody watching this that doesn't have the ability to get yourself into a high 6-7 figure position from a financial standpoint over the next 60 months.
Right.
Without killing yourself, without robbing and stealing, without doing anything crazy. Just a lot of times you can't do what you want to do because you don't know enough. Mm-hmm. So just know more, and then execute on what you know, and put yourself around, you know, the right people. But yeah, that's a huge don't. You can't. And if you were in this position in 2008 and survived it, and between 2008 and now didn't make the necessary changes not to find yourself here again, well, here's another opportunity. It's right here. Normally this happens, by the way, there's normally a major economic downturn once every 7 years.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
it seems that way. It seems that way. Something crazy happens.
If you think about our lifetime, you had the tariff crisis, you had the oil crisis. You know, that's when we were kids, mm-hmm. right? Because remember the long gas lines?
Yeah.
Back when we were kids in the 80s and stuff. You know, then you had the tech bubble. Then you had the housing bubble. Mm-hmm. You know, people forget, but the world wasn't on when we were born in the 70s. The world wasn't on the dollar was not the world currency.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the sterling, like the British pound and all of that was the world mm-hmm. currency in the 70s. That changed in the late 70s. Just like people forget that, you know, I always rail against, if you ever read my writings, I'm always railing against qualified plans, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. I think they're total crap. Those things didn't even exist when we were born. You know, they didn't invent that. They didn't invent that trash until the 1977. But people didn't start using it until 82. And all those qualified plans are just a vehicle for corporations to get out of legacy costs. They want to get away from having to pay you for the rest of your life. So they make you investor of your own money in a bad plan that nobody's in control of. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, I owed you a pension. I used to have to pay you 70% of what you were making for the rest of your life as long as you were alive. Now, and I just go, hey, I tell you what, you put in as much of your money as you want to put in and I'll match it.
Right.
But remember, when you leave, I'm no longer responsible for you. All of a sudden, making every Joe Blow in America a stock market investor when they never were before.
Right.
Our grandparents and the generation before them, none of them were stock market investors. They didn't get their wealth. They got their wealth by, they would work at a job, they had that pension, and then, you know, they might buy a little extra house and rent it out. They might buy a little laundromat. They might, you know, do little, everybody had a little side hustle business. Everybody had a little side hustle business. This, that, and third. They made more money from business,
Right.
selling dinners and da-da-da. They made more money from business than any of these people ever made from any stock market investing. And we lost that science. And it's not a science. We didn't lose it hundreds of years ago. We lost a science that we had on lock even in the 60s and 70s. Now you can't remember. You can't even remember the hustles that your granduncles and grandfathers and grandmothers the way they used to move with money.
Exactly.
Nobody translated any of that to you. So you don't move with money like that. You don't remember that the family used to have a 3-family house and grandma lived on one floor and the cousins lived on another. And all of that. Now we just glad we got we just want to show everybody we all can have a big house, right? Didn't even think about the economic consequences of a 3-family house with 3 families in it,
right?
And how the first floor was covering the second floor, and the second floor was covering the third floor, and the third floor was covering the first floor, right?
Right. That's interesting. That goes back
that
to
was poverty.
Right. That's interesting. That goes back to what was your article about the Korean
how to move furniture like Koreans.
Right. That's very interesting how that went full circle. That's very interesting.
I mean, it's a very real thing, bro. It's a very real thing. It's like there's sciences that we lost a lot in the transatlantic slave trade, but we also lost a lot we had a second wave of massive loss in integration and especially mental integration.
Yes.
The idea that success was being able to be a part of somebody else's world and somebody else's lifestyle and what have you.
Right. That's true. That's true.
To live in their neighborhood where they didn't even want you to begin with, or whatever. That's so true. And that's what gets us to this moment. But we can learn from it and be forced back. The pandemic can force people back together.
Yes.
Force you to eat in the house. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Force the planes to the ground so the sky is clear.
Yeah.
If you've been seeing all the articles that are showing that, people are seeing mountain ranges and different things that have been around cities that they haven't seen. Like the smog is gone from over LA now, right? If you're in Utah, you can now see the mountains again and different things like that because.
Wow, I didn't even know that about LA and I didn't know that.
Yeah, all this stuff has been dissipating because the businesses aren't running and then the air is clear. It's like, oh, that was right there. Oh yeah, there was a mountain range over there. Oh, never seen that in my lifetime. It's like there's articles, if you Google them, people are like, oh, there's people are seeing this mountain range for the first time in the last 50 years.
Wow.
So it's some things happening and people being forced back to themselves if they can see and feel, but feel empowered by this moment right now. Feel empowered by it. Don't feel trapped in the house. You ain't been able to sit still and think your own thoughts for years. Mm-hmm. Might be the first time in your adult life that you had the opportunity to sit still. Now, I'm suggesting that if you're going to sit still, read a book while you're doing it.
Yeah.
On something of your interest that's going to take you where you're trying to go or whatever. But this is what it is. This is an opportunity. Yeah, this is an opportunity. So I say, hey, let's really go for it and take full advantage of the moment we find ourselves in.
Well, man, you've been powerful once again, Mark. I definitely appreciate you, man. Just talk to the people if they want to contact you, how they can get in contact with you. And do you help people with assessing their finances and stuff like that?
Absolutely, because we still do the residential and commercial mortgages. I'm still a huge referral source to all of my folks in insurance, investments, and stuff like that. And then we do strategic business planning because that's crucial. So trying to figure out and think through situations, that's what I enjoy the most, And that's what I do with so many of our clients. If someone wants to reach out to me, they can call me directly at 410-908-5987. Again, 410-908-5987. If I can be of service to you, or I have a resource that I can connect you to, I'm happy to do so and whatnot. And again, I thank you, Everett, for the time. It's always great to chat and have these conversations. I get a lot from the podcast that I watch with the guests that you have.
Oh, man, I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. I'm always happy to see so many of our good mutual friends that we've all known for so many years, especially my brother Ernest.
Oh, Lord.
And that's Ernest is my guy, man.
If it's a controversial topic, brother Ernest is calling in.
Yeah.
He don't mess around.
That's my guy. I mean, we went to college together, and
I didn't know that. I grew up with this brother.
Yeah, we went to Maryland together.
Oh man, wow!
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Ernest and I went to we went to Maryland together, and that era in the late '80s, early '90s was like the '60s. You know, I mean, so there was always every dorm room, every lunchroom was a barbershop conversation. You know, we were all in there trying to split atoms. You know what I mean?
Right.
And not only was Ernst a great artist even then, but he was a great barber.
Yes, he used to cut my hair.
Yeah, he used to cut my hair when he was.
This small world, man.
Yeah, he was the first barber when I got to college. So I mean that's my guy, man. And every time I go to one of his art openings, I'm just blown away by the depth of his talent and what's communicated in his work. So it's like but I say all of that, man, because anytime I'm scrolling, I see you guys on the screen, man. I got to stop and I'll run it back so I can see what you guys are talking about and everything, man. It's been some great conversations, and I thank you for providing the platform, because it's really been excellent.
I appreciate you once again, Mark. And as always, man, I'm gonna get you back on. You're so powerful, man. So I give it a few, and I'll be hitting you up.
Anytime, brother. Anytime. Just let me know.
You got it. Have a good one.
All right, brother. Take care.